Beneath London's soot-stained skies, they crafted elegance from poison. These men made hats, beautiful, luxurious hats, and with every stitch, they unwittingly stitched their own demise. It began quietly. A trembling hand, a forgotten name. Then came the hallucinations. Invisible rats, phantom voices. Colleagues became strangers. Then strangers became threats. The world saw their unraveling and turned it into comedy. Mad as a hatter, they'd jeer, raising glasses to the very men they'd condemned to the margins. The joke, like the mercury, stuck. What does madness look like? In the 1800s, it looked like Thomas, once proud, now pawing at imaginary insects on his skin. Like Elias, screaming at walls only he could see. Like dozens of forgotten men, their minds sacrificed at the altar of fashion. When Lewis Carroll wrote his Wonderland, he gave us a charming madman, all tea parties and wordplay. The real hatters got no such whimsy. Only cold asylum cells, where their tremors echoed unanswered. Today we know better. The term remains, mad as a hatter. But now we see the truth. This wasn't madness. This was murder by 1,000 invisible drops. Their story warns us, how many modern poisons do we ignore? How many workers' pains do we call just part of the job? The hatters are gone. The mercury remains. And the world? The world still makes hats.
Would you believe that America became a nation of coffee drinkers because of tea? While this quote makes light of the situation, tea did play a role in the American Revolution. England's interest in the East Indian Tea Company had led Parliament to impose taxes on the American colonies. Indeed, it was England's interest in the East Indian Tea Company, a huge revenue generator that had started flagging, that prompted the British Parliament to levy taxes on the American colonies, including duties on tea. This wasn't really about taxation on tea, but rather that they were being taxed by Parliament without having any representation in it. The British monarchy and Parliament, however, disagreed. The colonists were living in British colonies and being represented. The Crown attempted to tighten its grip on the colony, but the colonists fought back. This would lead to the American Revolution. The result of the American War of Independence would not only reshape the global politics of the time, but it would also establish and set the course for the early history of the United States. One of the greatest powers in African history, the Mali Empire dominated trade, culture, and politics in West Africa for centuries. The empire grew quickly and controlled the key trade routes linking the region to Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Thanks to the reserves of gold and salt, the empire was one of the richest states of the time. Under the rule of Mansa Musa, 1312 to 1337, Mali peaked. It was a center of learning and commerce. When Mansa Musa completed his legendary pilgrimage to Mecca in 1324, his immense wealth and the gold he distributed during his journey disrupted economies in several cities. The Great Depression was a severe worldwide economic depression that took place mostly during the 1930s, beginning in the United States. The timing of the Great Depression varied across the world. In most countries, it started in 1929 and lasted until the late 1930s. It was the longest, deepest, and most widespread depression of the 20th century. The Great Depression is commonly used as an example of how intensely the global economy can decline. The Great Depression started in the United States after a major fall in stock prices that began around September 4th, 1929, and became worldwide news with the stock market crash of October 29th, 1929. Between 1929 and 1932, worldwide gross domestic product fell by an estimated 15%. By comparison, worldwide GDP fell by less than 1% from 2008 to 2009 during the Great Recession. Some economies started to recover by the mid-1930s. However, in many countries, the negative effects of the Great Depression lasted until the beginning of World War II. The Great Depression had devastating effects in both rich and poor countries. Personal income, tax revenue, profits and prices dropped, while international trade fell by more than 50%. Anne Boleyn's arrival at Henry VIII's court changed history. With her sharp wit and defiant charm, she refused to be just another mistress.
A king deserves more than stolen moments.
Desperate for a male heir and enchanted by Anne, Henry broke from the Catholic Church when the Pope refused his divorce. In 1533, he cast aside Catherine of Aragon and crowned Anne queen. Their daughter Elizabeth's birth brought joy, but not the son Henry demanded. As Anne suffered miscarriages, Henry's passion turned to paranoia. Thomas Cromwell, once her ally, fed the king's doubts with treasonous accusations.
She betrays you with other men, even her brother.
The charges were absurd, but Henry believed them.
I pray God save the king.
Within days, Henry married Jane Seymour. Yet Anne's legacy proved indestructible. Her daughter Elizabeth would become England's greatest queen, and Henry's break with Rome reshaped Christianity forever. Anne's tragic story, from dazzling rise to brutal fall, remains one of history's most compelling tales of power, love, and betrayal.
The Maurya Empire and Ashoka, 268 to 232 BCE. The Maurya Empire, one of South Asia's greatest, peaked under Emperor Ashoka. After a bloody conquest of Kalinga, horrified by the suffering, he embraced Buddhism and ruled with peace, morality, and economic progress. Ashoka promoted religious tolerance, built infrastructure, and spread Buddhist teachings across Asia, influencing regions like China and Southeast Asia. His reign marked a shift from war to compassionate governance, leaving a lasting legacy.
The year is 1600. A sickly second son, Charles Stuart, is born, never meant to be king. But fate intervenes. His brilliant older brother, Prince Henry, dies suddenly, thrusting young Charles into the spotlight. Crowned in 1625, Charles I inherits a kingdom simmering with tension. He believes God himself chose him to rule, Parliament's approval unnecessary. He taxes ruthlessly, silences critics, and marries a Catholic French bride, Henrietta Maria, enraging Protestant England. When furious Scots rebel over his religious reforms, Charles is forced to recall Parliament after 11 years of solo rule. They demand control. He refuses. War explodes in 1642. Royalists versus Parliament's hardened New Model army. After years of bloodshed, the unthinkable. The king is captured. Put on trial, Charles stands defiant. No earthly court can judge a king, he declares. But on January 30th, 1649, an axe falls. The crowd gasps as Charles I's head drops, a monarch executed by his own people. England becomes a republic, but the shockwaves last forever. The message is clear: no ruler is above justice.
In the dim royal bedchamber, James I lies on his deathbed. His aged face, etched with time, is highlighted by the faint light. His breath comes in ragged gasps, each one a struggle. Young James I sits surrounded by books, his focus absolute. An animated overlay appears, showcasing James' lineage and early reign in Scotland. The on-screen text proclaims, "Academically gifted monarch." Within the Grand English Court, James I presides over a pivotal discussion, bathed in the golden light of a new era. Sunlight illuminates dust motes, and the air is filled with the promise of unity as the kingdoms converge. Behind him, a map illustrates the merging of two realms, uniting the kingdoms. The banqueting house stands in its architectural grandeur. Patron of English architecture, James I oversees the Hampton Court Conference, a pivotal moment in the making of the King James Bible. Scholars are engrossed in the intricate translation of the Bible, their pens moving swiftly across parchment. The King James Bible, a lasting legacy, appears on screen, a testament to its enduring influence. The printing press roars to life, churning out countless copies of the King James Bible. The scene emphasizes the Bible's widespread distribution and profound impact. A title card appears, published in 1611. The Bible rests silently on the table, symbolizing James's enduring influence. His legacy endures. Historical landmarks associated with James I flash across the screen. The sequence transitions to libraries and churches, each echoing the past. Uplifting music fills the air, enhancing the sense of history and legacy.
King Charles I's belief in divine right led to conflict with Parliament over taxes and religious reforms. After dissolving Parliament for 11 years, his attempt to impose Anglican practices on Scotland forced its recall in 1640. When Charles tried arresting parliamentary leaders in 1642, civil war erupted. Oliver Cromwell's new model army crushed royalist forces at Naseby, 1645, capturing letters revealing Charles's plan to use Irish Catholic troops. Defeated, Charles fled to the Scots, who later sold him to Parliament for £400,000. His escape and instigation of the Second Civil War, 1648, proved fatal. In January 1649, a revolutionary court convicted Charles of treason against England. On January 30th, before a silent crowd at Whitehall, the king was executed. This unprecedented regicide ended absolute monarchy in England, though the crown was restored in 1660 with permanent limits on royal power. Charles's fate proved no monarch could rule unchecked.
The year was 1649, and England stood at a crossroads. On a cold January morning, King Charles I, once the divinely ordained ruler of England, mounted the scaffold before a hushed crowd. With a single stroke of the axe, the monarchy was severed not just in body, but in principle. The unthinkable had happened. A king had been condemned and executed by his own subjects. In the wake of Charles I's death, England plunged into uncharted territory. The Rump Parliament, a remnant of the Long Parliament purged of royalist sympathisers, abolished the monarchy and declared England a Commonwealth or republic without a king. The House of Lords, a centuries-old institution, was swept away. The people watched in awe and trepidation as their world was remade. But peace did not follow. Oliver Cromwell, the iron-willed general who had led Parliament's forces to victory in the civil wars, now turned his attention to crushing resistance. Ireland was subdued in a brutal campaign, with massacres like Drogheda sending a chilling message. In Scotland, Charles I's son, the young Charles II, rallied loyalists only to be crushed at the Battle of Worcester, 1651. The prince barely escaped, fleeing in disguise while his followers faced imprisonment or death. By 1653, Cromwell had grown disillusioned with Parliament's infighting. In a dramatic move, he dissolved it by force, declaring himself Lord Protector. England became a protectorate, ruled under strict Puritan laws. Theatres were shuttered, Christmas celebrations banned, and morality enforced by soldiers. Though Cromwell refused the crown, his rule was as absolute as any king's. When Cromwell died in 1658, his son Richard briefly took power but lacked his father's grip. The nation spiraled into chaos. By 1660, exhausted by instability, General George Monk orchestrated the restoration, inviting Charles II back from exile. The Republic collapsed as swiftly as it had risen. The monarchy was restored, but England had changed forever. The execution of Charles I had proven that no king was beyond judgment. Though the crown returned, its power would never again go unchecked, a lesson written in blood and revolution.